All right. Hello, everybody. We are back for our latest episode of Boardroom RevOps, where we're bringing you valuable tips from RevOps experts so you can make it to the C-suite. I'm James, co-founder of AccountAim, the RevOps BI platform. Super excited to welcome Jamie Carney, VP of RevOps at People.ai today. Jamie, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm a sucker for a good framework, a good mental model, so I'm excited about this chat. We're going to chat about one of your top-of-mind frameworks at the moment for RevOps, which is the 3 Whys, which we'll dive into. But before we do you want to just kind of share your quick background for folks?
Yeah, so Jamie Carney, I'm the VP of RevOps at People.ai. Before People.ai, I was doing RevOps and mergers and acquisitions at a company called Flexera based here in Chicago. I'm out of Chicago. Before that, I was doing RevOps before it was called RevOps at a company called CareerBuilder.com, where we grew to be a rather large company when I started, and I was there for about 17 years, so multiple iterations, way too long. To be honest, if you're at a company for 17 years, I advise you to, even though I learned a ton, I advise you maybe 17 years is a little bit too.
I always forget you're a career builder. We have the job board connection in common. I was at Indeed.com for a short time. So another time we'll chat all things
Yeah, Paul
job
Forrester,
evolution.
were you there the early days with Brendan Cruikshank and Chris Campbell and Paul
Not
Forrester?
quite the early days, no. Post-recruit acquisition.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was I was at Career Builder. I mean, I used to get a call from the Bureau of Labor Statistics guy to go over what he saw in the trends to make sure I was okay with them at one point. Because I would call him and talk to him about.
That's awesome. Love it. That's a whole other podcast episode. But let's dive in. 3 Whys. What is this framework?
So let's be honest. Why are the 3 Ys important to me as a RevOps person? A lot of the stuff that we do in RevOps, and I don't know about you, but you're using AI to do a lot more today. From automated account planning to territory design. I do it to look at stage hygiene and all of that. And so there's one component though that if you do your medic scorecards, like let's be honest, and I'm going to give you some of my ideas here. Medic, MedPick, all of that, those are great. Those are great frameworks to allow and make sure that every rep is doing what we're asking them to do. Go find champions, go identify metrics that matter, go find the economic buyer and all of that. But you can have a MedPick scorecard at 100%. You're still not going to sell anything. Because that's really to make sure that the reps are doing their due diligence and their homework on an account or on an opportunity. It's really not there to help sell. And so at the end of the day, I look at the 3 Ys. That's something that AI can never take away because AI is smart in the fact that it can do a lot of stuff. It can give you superpowers and it can span farther. One thing I will make sure everyone on this call knows is if you're using AI, AI does lie. It lies because it's there to please. So if it doesn't know, it'll make things up, and then you have to question it, and it'll tell you it made it up. Um, but AI will give you the ability to do a lot of things. At the end of the day, the 3 Ys will tell you if this deal is going to come in or not. And so the 3 Ys, for those that don't know, it's why buy your product, why buy anything, why buy. Like those are typically the 3 Ys. And you'll know if you have an enablement problem if you go around and basically explain the why buy your product and you say to every rep, and make it obvious. Like, let's imagine your example is I'm selling prosthetics and I want to sell to a person who has a missing arm, a right arm. You obviously, the why buy James Carney prosthetic company right arm is because you're missing a right arm. Like make sure when you ask them this question, you're setting the stage of what type of product offering inside your suite of products this company should be selling. And if they all say it, if every rep says it kind of the same, there's always this I need to create my own voice type of stuff. And I agree, you do need to create your own voice. But if they're all hitting the same value components inside that why buy your product, then you don't have an enablement problem. If they aren't, they're all sort of answering it in different ways or they're fumbling across that. And this isn't an elevator pitch. This is a why buy a certain solution.
Mm-hmm.
then you probably have an enablement problem. So immediately you should stop right there. I'm not going to go on to the next two whys. I need to meet with not only my enablement team, but an enablement team are there to kick kickstart learning. You're the enablement happens when the enablers leave their 1 week or 2 week boot camp and you're with your first line leaders. So your first line leaders need to be the best enablers out there. And a lot of shortcomings that occur when we look at this, and I know this is a little bit off track, but this is still within the three whys. This is how I inspect the three whys, is that a lot of times, or uh, a lot of times your first line leaders are not are the best salespeople, but are probably not the best enablers.
Mm.
They may have sold for different use cases. They may have sold things that our product roadmap didn't do, and we're having churn problems later on. They may have sold on promises because they were hunter and they weren't caring about the farming solution, but they were able to crush quota. And a lot of times they're like, I'm going to make you a leader. Be very cognizant. Your first line leader needs to be your enabler. They're probably the people that hit quota, but don't crush quota. They're probably the people that consistently perform 80 to 110% of product agreement. Those are probably your best, uh, people to put as frontline leaders because they're more system and process oriented, and then they can actually communicate out the why buy a certain solution and help all the reps do that. So why buy that? So why buy anything is really an enablement and consistency on value messaging, right? I'm going to skip the why buy anything because that's really like we can talk about that forever. Why buy now is the compelling event, right? And I talk to some people and they'll say, well, we really march to make sure it's a compelling event. We do an ROI and we do a POV and we make sure that I'm going to be honest, selling happens. Salespeople are really not sellers. Enabling people in an organization, and maybe not when you're talking smaller, but in a larger organization, 250 and above employees. Seller is really enabling the people inside that organization to sell your solution internally,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the why buy now is one of the hardest things to encompass because you can say, well, I'm selling against this competitor. Their contract is up for renewal in March. And when I talk to Sarah or Joe at the company, they want to move to our product. So therefore, I think they're going to buy in March because that's when their contract is up, or if not before, but they've got to come up with a solution. And maybe that was January. They hung up the phone and the competitor called in and they said, hey, we're still assessing, what we should do. And is there any way I can get a 3-month extension? They get Sarah or Joe get a 3-month extension on their current contract to assess other options. Um, and they're not going to call you and say, hey, by the way, great news. I got a 3-month extension, right? So, but what happens there is as a rep, you're saying, here's my why buy now. I've got my why buy this certain product and I'm forecasting and I'm committing and I'm calling it. And I hate the word commit because then people go, oh, commit is in blood, whatever it is. But then they committed in March and it gets pushed. And this is where people lose their jobs. This is where sales leaders lose faith in the sales rep because his or her why buy now or compelling event or way to predict outcomes is weak. And by the way, that is no matter how great your product is, that is the weakest part of every sale because even if you show the most amazing ROI, you say, hey, our product is going to, if without our product, you're going to lose $1 million. Depending on that company and depending on how big that company is, they may not care about cost. They might be
Yeah.
you're talking to OpenAI and you say, hey, I can save you $100,000 next month.
We spend that a second on compute.
They would be like, great, our initiative is growth, not cost savings, right? So they're not going to
Yeah.
jump at that. But you might sit there and say, look at our why by now. They're going to do this because they're going to lose money. I'll be honest, Flexera is a great example. I was at Flexera and it was a very technical sale. But a lot of what they do is they look at all of the usage that a company buys and they say you're underutilizing or you're overutilizing. This one division bought 1,000 seats and is using 200. You bought 200 seats and are overusing 1,000 seats, and you're paying a penalty on that when you could just be using the 800 from your other division. When you get to be bigger, there's so much corporate waste that goes on. And then they would go in and say, hey, you bought this company, this software for A, B, and for this solution. You bought this company for that solution. By the way, the company that you bought for the ABC solution offers, as a side note, offers what the other company offers, and you have it as part of your package. You just never used it. Because why? You didn't buy it for that reason. So there's a lot of hidden stuff in there. And Flexera would do this, and they would showcase, hey, you're going to save $4 million by doing this. I mean, literally, there was one use case where we proved out that we're going to save, Flexera is going to save a company $4 million. And I remember the CRO told me, he goes, hey, look, we're going to save them $4 million. What do you think? And I'm like, I think you charged them way too little. Because for $500,000, they're saving $4 million. Why wouldn't you charge them 2 million?
Yeah.
But still, at the end of the day, it's not always compelling to them because that $4 million at a big company, to me, that sounds like a lot of money,
Yeah, it
but
might
they
not move
might
the
not
needle
see it
though.
that way. So the why buy now is once again, the why buy your product is really, I think it's more of enablement. Um, the why buy now is no matter how great you are at buttoning that up, is where the stress comes in, the sales stress. That's where people lose their jobs. That's where you lie awake sleeping. You lie awake not sleeping because you're worried about this contract. Back in the day, it used to be everyone would come into the office and hover around a fax machine. You know what I mean? Like they would just wait to see the fax come in. I mean, now it's emails and
DocuSigns
wondering
and
DocuSigns and this, that, who's looked at it, what
yeah,
I mean, 8 approvers and 7 have approved, whatever it is.
yeah.
Um, those things are the ones that drive me nuts. Now, the really intriguing one is the why buy anything. So to me, the why buy anything is a true test of your product. Um, and the reality is when I look at the 3 whys, I go, why buy your product? Why buy now? And by the way, why buy your product? And then the why buy anything, or like, pardon my French, who gives a shit? You know, when your answer you need to have that answer buttoned up. That is where urgency is created, right? That's where it'll feed the why buy now. So in certain cases, you might be like, if you don't buy what we're offering, especially newer areas, if you don't buy what we're offering, then you don't get what we're offering. By the way, that's not compelling.
Mm.
And it's not compelling now. That might be your end all answer to why buy anything. But if that is your answer to why buy anything, you need to make, if you don't get it, important. Um, and that takes an entire organization and team and investment into making that way. Now, I liken this why buy anything. The example I typically use is 5 years ago. Well, first of all, growing up, I didn't own a water bottle. If I did, it was one of those green plastic Gatorade bottles or simple plastic bottle that I'd probably lose all the time. We use water fountains, right? Um, Somehow my kids all have water bottles. But in the last 5 years, at Christmas time, I got 4 kids. At Christmas time, it was all about, I need a Stanley water bottle. You don't need a Stanley water. Why buy Stanley water bottles? Because they look cool and everyone has one. Why not buy a Stanley water bottle? Because I don't have a Stanley water bottle. I don't have one. Right. Once again, there's no real answer that says I need to have it. Why buy it now? Because I need it. You know what I mean? The reality is marketing came in and hit a chord with this younger generation And Stanley's, personally, I don't know, James, did you ever see a Stanley commercial?
No?
No, never saw a Stanley commercial. Yet I have a whole cabinet dedicated to Owala and Stanley water bottles. I have my kids getting an Owala water bottle at Christmas and going, "Oh, I got a Owala water bottle. It's the green and gold one." Like, seriously, like it's a water bottle. Like, who cares? But at the same time, that's if you're now liking that to software sales or anything, and you've got the why buy your product, and then you got the why buy anything. And if your why buy anything is weak, immediately you got to raise your hand and say, how do we make that not weak? And if my
Yeah.
weak by weak, it means because if you don't buy us, you don't get it. And what you need to do is spend a considerable amount of money in making sure that if you don't have your product, you don't get it. You're no longer cool. You don't fit in with the rest of the people. You miss the fear of missing out. All of those things need to come into play when you're thinking
Yeah.
about spending.
Yeah. This is great. I like this because this is like a good example of what I would call like a VP of RevOps level analysis. So instead of being, manager level, you're kind of in the weeds. Let's get Salesforce up and running. It's actually taking a step back, think about how we can move forward the business. So I think this is a great framework to diagnose problems. But then, like, what's your advice on what to do next from like a RevOps perspective? So how can someone leading RevOps then like put this into action? I think for why our company or product, you mentioned like getting enablement motion going. But how about some of these other things?
Well, so that's a great one. You need all the sales leaders on board, right? And you need to have enough sales leaders to sort of help. Sales leaders, once again, are your enablement team, but they're also your police of guidelines and policies.
Mhm.
So you'll hear there's a pushback right now, I think, in a lot of organizations that AI is going to allow me to manage salespeople, more salespeople, less sales leaders. And I would say, yes, that works for tried and true, more mature sales processes, right? So you don't need that. And I'll get to your answer here real quick on that. But in terms of when you have that why buy anything that's missing, you almost need more sales leaders because a lot of times you're trying to figure it out, and then you need to report back to the marketing team. And then really a RevOps person from a high level perspective, their job is twofold. The Make sure that the buying journey and the customer journey are seamless from a buyer's perspective. Now, a buyer is a prospect. Customer is obviously a customer, but both of those need to be seamless. When you're looking at that, that means marketing needs to be hitting the values that sales is talking about, and they need to
Mhm.
be beating the drum on those values either through an ABM, your website, MQLs, however you want to go about it. But the values that you're portraying inside sales need to be the values that marketing is doing. And I've seen it where it's just been dysfunctional, where sales is talking about this product and marketing is talking about that product. And then I've seen it where where leaders come in and there's a lot of whiplash. Hey, we're not going to try to sell focus on this product at all anymore. And then next week, they're like, hey, we can take out this company that competes against the product we said we're not going to focus on and do a sales tactic. And you as a sales leader, or you as a RevOps professional, you need to push back. At the end of the day, it's their, you can't fault them for trying everything that they can. So you got to be supportive. But at the end of the day, you need to push back and say, wait a second. I thought we weren't doing this. I thought we were focused on this. We need to stay with the strategy, stick with the strategy, stick with the strategy. In terms of the three whys, one thing that I've done here, and you need the sales leaders to sort of enforce, is ask the reps to fill in the three whys on every single opportunity once it gets to a certain stage. They might not know the answers to the three whys early on, but they should be able to fill out why they think the three, but it could be unconfirmed. But if it's a later stage opportunity and the three whys are not there, and then you need to build a report around those three whys. So it's not, I'm looking at every deal and I'm clicking into those deals. Every time you have someone click to get to an answer, you have less and less people clicking.
Yeah.
right? And this is where AI could come into play. You can have the AI. In fact, I'm just thinking about doing this. You have the AI go in and spider all of the opportunities that are in late stages and comment on the three whys, when it was last updated and all of that, and spit that out in a daily email. I always say daily email or weekly email, whatever you want. I always say email over Slack because I think Slack is more conversational. Email is more reporting.
Mm.
Uh, I don't know about you, but I have so many Slack channels that I often lose.
But yeah, it's noise.
I lose where anything was, but I've got a daily sync email where every leader gets the conversations that their team has had with their clients and all the detractors and risks associated with that in an email every single day. That because then they can look at what happened. Maybe they've got a rep that they're sort of like, I don't know about this rep. And maybe they've got deals that they want to stay on top of. Every day they go into email and look at it and check out what's going on and see if there's
Yeah.
something that bubbled up that they were unaware of because they were not able to be there, right?
I love collecting the three whys kind of systematically on every deal too, because I think that's such a good feedback loop for the business as a whole as well. Because I think these three whys are core to product market fit and to urgency and all these things that needs to be fed back to executives, to product leadership to think about what they need to change in product, to marketing for sure to think about using like the verbiage that customers are actually saying on each of these. I think that's really good advice.
Yeah. And I mean that is how you do it. You have to report on it. You have to enforce it. You have to have your sales leaders to enforce it, and it can't be in waves. Like I get it's end of the quarter, it's end of the year, it's this. I'm bringing in big deals. The biggest problem everyone has is we're living in the moment and we're not thinking about the next steps and the next quarter and the quarter after that. Um, we'll get to it when we have to, right? So there needs to be a consistent push and policy and regulation around it.
For sure. So I think we're almost at time here, but this is great. I think to kind of summarize, so the three whys: why your company or your product, why buy anything, why buy now. If you can answer these well, you should be in pretty good shape as a business, at least in the direction you're steering. But the way to assess if this is all aligned is, map out the entire customer journey, make sure that marketing through sales is aligned on these things, and we're all speaking the same language. Track it through transcripts, call recordings, in kind of a systematic way to see where people are off. The symptoms of this being off would just be, different answers between different reps. And if that is the case, then it's back to just enablement across each of these buckets and teams. Is that the right summary for this? Like,
Yeah,
what did I miss?
that's
Okay.
exactly it. Yeah.
Okay. Any final advice as it relates to like the three whys that you've seen or pitfalls or anything else before we kind of wrap?
Rather than the three whys, I always say, AI is out there, guys. AI is out there. I'm using it all the time myself. I've got a lot of gray hair, so it's odd that I am living and breathing in AI. But I will say this, don't over don't over rely on AI, right? Just don't automate the mundane. Use the AI to help you do what you are doing more consistently and quicker, but don't start with AI. AI should be used as your executive assistant, your private assistant. It should allow you to operate a RevOps team with smaller amount of people because I don't need all this intense data analysis as long as I spend a lot of time with someone on creating markdown files and commands for the AI to do that. And I'm saying this as a warning because I've talked to reps who almost start with AI, and that's not where you want to go because AI is dumb. You've got to train the AI to be smart. AI can do more, meaning that it can consistently do things, but you have to train it first. And there's so many people that AI is much more than an LLM. AI is a way to do things, but you have to spend a considerable amount of time to train it. And especially with this three whys, you're going to have to train it on understanding what is a three why. You can almost automatically generate a why statement for each of these if you train it to look for certain things and always safeguard yourself. Don't lie. It'll lie till it's amazing. It's ingenious because it wants to answer you.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
watch
yeah.
the
And I know
person.
even just asking it on every answer is, "Are you sure?" is such a good double check because so
Yeah,
often
like
it'll immediately backpedal.
there was one part where AI quoted. I was one of my friends was telling me about how it quoted a person that he was working with. And he said that person he went over, he goes, I never said that. And then he asked AI and they said, yeah, you said it on 3 minutes and 4 seconds in this podcast. And they watched the podcast the entire, like I told you, I never saw it. And then he went back to the AI and said, yeah, I couldn't access the podcast. So I just like basically made up a transcript and then
That's
quoted this
crazy.
person on what he or what the AI, it's not a he or she, it's a it, what the AI thought that person would say. Like that's just crazy, right? But
That's
so
crazy.
therefore you have to write in your and markdown files and all of that. You have to write in like certain things of rules. Like here are the rules I want you to do. And one of them is don't make don't make anything up. Just don't. It's got to be at valid sites. It can't be at parody sites. Don't go to Reddit and grab anything from Reddit. You know, something like that where you're gonna just go through and then you've got to constantly evolve because when you find a lie, you've got to put it in your so that going forward
Yeah,
it's all better.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, we're at time, Jamie. This was really fun. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having me. Sorry I had to reschedule a couple times.
All good.
Okay.
Thanks again.
All right. See ya.